This is Wally. He's our most recent. We wanted him to be friends with Francis. As you can see, that's working out pretty well. They're BFFs. Francis, the big white one there, we saw her get hit by a car and had to take her in, you know. At first we were just gonna foster her, but she was a foster failure. We ended up keeping her because we just got too attached. But yeah, they love to play. They get kind of rowdy. And then that's Onion. That's our first dog. And yeah, she's who started it all, I guess. And then that's Bean. We adopted her when we were living in Alabama. We saw Onion play with my sister's dog, and after we saw that, we knew we needed to get another dog so that they could play together, and Onion and Bean are best friends, and have been for years now, so. I'm Trey Morrow. I went vegan in 2017. It was kind of a big lead up to that. So in 2009, I was in a band, and some of those guys were like pescatarians and vegetarians, and they kind of peer pressured me into trying a veggie burger, and then I was like, okay, I could maybe do this, but I continued to eat fish flesh until I kind of found out what goes on in the fishing industry and also in the fish farming industry. The excuse I kept telling myself was, these fish are caught out of their natural habitat, so it's not as bad as, these land animals that, are in factory farms. I ended up YouTubing it or Googling it, and I looked it up, and I saw some of the most horrific footage I had ever seen. And it was, on fish farms where they're all kind of swimming around in their own excrement. Really intense situation. And it's some of the most horrific footage I had ever seen. So I decided in that moment I was going vegetarian. And unfortunately, it took me years later to really find out about the dairy and egg and honey industries and develop that mindset that animals are here with us, not for us. There's no right way to exploit an animal, even if you don't kill them. Eventually, I developed that mindset in 2017. Veganism is, in my opinion, just pretty much a mindset that animals are here with us and not for us. It is going as far as practically possible not to use them in any way, because all use is exploitation, all exploitation is abuse, and all abuse is immoral. So there's really no justification for most of us to exploit an animal in any way for our survival, for our entertainment, anything like that. So animals are their own beings with their own interests, and they deserve to either be left alone if they're wild animals, or nurtured in a sanctuary or in a home, or some other kind of non-exploitative place. So when people find out I'm vegan, some common questions I get are the typical ones, like how do you get your protein, and where do you shop, what do you eat, those kinds of things. And once I explain how easy it is to people, I feel like a lot of them want to try it, but some people don't. I've really been focused more on getting vegans and animal lovers and people that care about animals to be active do activism lately. That's kind of what I've been more focused on. Yeah, I still do talk to people about going vegan, and I think I get the same questions that everybody gets, and try to debunk those. Yeah, I've noticed big differences since I've been vegan. From the time I was a 19-year-old flesh eater until now I'm 32. It's been a big difference. Between that time, I've lost about 65 pounds. I've gotten rid of a lot of my allergies that I have. I had some Francis, come here, sweetie. When I was 19, I was still eating animals, and now I'm 32, and there's been big differences. I've lost about 65 pounds total. That's not the reason that I went vegan. I went vegan for the animals, but I've noticed, that I'm healthier. I used to have really intense allergies and I don't anymore. I used to have allergies in my eyes and nose and throat, like super horrible, and all that has cleared up for the most part. And yeah, I generally just feel mentally better because I know that I'm not contributing to all this death and suffering. Most important reasons for me to be vegan now, I think it's the same as what it was in the beginning, which is for the animals. It started out for the animals. Of course, that evolved to be the animals and the planet and food justice and all these different issues. But at the core of it, definitely, it's always been about the animals, just not valuing my own taste pleasure, my own convenience, or anything like that over the life of an animal. I share my home with 4 dogs, and I can't imagine saying, okay, well, you've lived a good life, I've treated you well, I'm gonna now go have your body processed for people to eat and make money off of their bodies. That's just insanely cruel. It's a betrayal, and I can't imagine being anything other than vegan. I think it's important for others to be vegan too. People tell me, live and let live, don't force your diet or your philosophy onto me. But in reality, those people who are not vegan are forcing animals to have their throat slit for their philosophy and their convenience and their taste pleasure. I think most people do love animals, or at least have enough respect for animals to not believe in what they might call animal cruelty. But in reality, all exploitation, all use is cruelty. So I think people, if they went vegan, would realize that they're more in alignment with their own morals and values. It's just about escaping that brainwashing that most of us have had since birth, that's so prevalent in our society, just to escape that and realize who you really are. Realize that you're not a violent person. Realize that you're not someone who wants to pay for some of the most atrocious crimes committed, which is to rob these animals of their lives, to rob them of their existence, to rob them of their happiness, of their families. I think that's why it's important to be vegan. I think what's most effective in getting other people to go vegan really varies depending on, where somebody lives, the kind of person they are, all these kinds of things. For me, I just speak from the heart, tell people the truth, tell people how I feel about it. I try not to get too involved in hardcore debate anymore, because there's really just a few things that veganism boils down to, and that is it's not necessary for survival, and it's relatively accessible, and we don't really have an excuse to harm these animals. So if somebody can't see past those few things, it's not that I'm not willing to go a little deeper into conversation, but really most of my focus lately has been on activism and systemic change rather than individual change. I still think individual change is obviously very important, but just for me personally, I've kind of shifted in a different direction. But yeah, I think sometimes people are ready to go vegan and sometimes they're not ready. I wish that everybody was ready right now, obviously, but sometimes it's about planting that seed and, just telling someone the truth. You can't really do much more than that. You can't force someone to go vegan. Yeah, you just have to tell them the truth and hope that their actions will catch up with their own morals if they're, someone who respects life. Ever since I became vegan, I knew I wanted to be an animal rights activist. I knew I just didn't want to sit back and eat my veggie burger and let that be it. I knew I wanted to go into it more. I found ways to become active. First, that was through encouraging others to be vegan and different kinds of outreach, just spreading the word about veganism, and that has now evolved into being a mentor for other people who want to become active. Because I know when I first went vegan, I was living in Opelika, Alabama. There weren't too many other vegans around. There definitely wasn't any major animal rights activism going on. So, you know, there's people out there who want to become animal rights activists, people who want to stand up for the animals, but maybe they feel like they're alone, or maybe they feel like they, you know, don't know how, or maybe they feel like they can't make a difference. So now my role in activism has kind of gone to helping those people, you know, find their voice, so to speak, and use their talents and their unique gifts for the animals in whatever way they can. So yeah, my activism's kind of shifted toward mentorship of others, and also pressure campaigns. I've been involved in pressure campaigns lately, and that's been great. Sometimes it can be really frustrating just trying to get people to go vegan all the time, because not everybody's ready to hear that message. It can be kind of deflating and defeating to just go through that process over and over to show someone the obvious, and you know, they're just not getting it, or maybe they just don't even care. So I really think that kind of activism is still very needed. But for me personally, I feel like I've got better energy toward my activism when I'm doing pressure campaigns and basically just trying to force companies and systems to change via, you know, lots of pressure and annoyance. The program that we do the mentorship with is called Animal Activism Mentorship. So people can go online to animalactivismmentorship.com and sign up, and they can get paired with a mentor who's an experienced activist that can, you know, help them find their way in activism. And AAM is also much more. You know, we promote pressure campaigns, and you know, mentors and mentees work together on pressure campaigns. We also do other kinds of activism as well. So yeah, Animal Activism Mentorship has been like a great community effort, both in just finding friendships and being there for each other, and also working together to work toward animal liberation, basically. I think when I first went vegan, some of the most intense challenges were, you know, feeling isolated, not feeling like I had a lot of resources, not feeling like I had other vegan friends to hang out with who understood me, who I could vent to. Some of the other challenges were finding out about all the horrible things that happen to animals and trying to speak up for them, and people not listening to what I had to say sometimes. You know, I mean, it's very frustrating, and it can be especially hurtful when, you know, you are friends with, or you know, you have family that are wonderful people, and you know, you tell them about what's happening to animals and they don't change. I mean, that can be really painful to watch somebody who you know is a good person, somebody who you love, participate in the violence that you've dedicated your life to ending. So that was really difficult. You know, luckily in my own personal life, I've made a lot of progress with that. One of the things I've feared when I first went vegan was, you know, is it going to be the same when I go to my grandparents' house? You know, we eat, you know, every Sunday we have a meal there, and that meal has now evolved into, you know, being vegan. There used to be a dairy batch and a vegan batch, and now it's all vegan because, you know, some of my family has gone more toward a plant-based diet. Not everybody's completely vegan yet, but you know, they respect what I do, and they are, I think they're trying. So I'm happy that they are. And you know, some of my friends have gone out with me to vegan restaurants and given it a try. So you know, I hope that one day everybody will be vegan. We'll see. But I think the main thing is to not get too caught up in all that. We all want our closest friends and family to be vegan, but we also can't drain all of our energy just focused on a select few people. It's it's much bigger than that. We have to figure out how we can use the energy that we have and the little time on earth that we have to make the maximum changes for animals for the positive. When I first went vegan, my girlfriend, she didn't really like get it, but she did make steps. She was a pescatarian, and then she went toward vegetarianism, and after a year of me being vegan, she went vegan, and that has made all the difference. She's also really instrumental in me being able to do like the activism that I do, and she does her own activism as well in a much different way than me, but we're totally different people, and we kind of complement each other in that way. So having a partner who's vegan and supports you in your activism and is on the same page with you in your ethics, that's huge, and it's been a huge thing for me, and I'm so thankful for her. Could I be with someone who isn't vegan? I honestly don't think I could at this point. You know, I don't even know how to answer that really, because you know, like, I'm with the person I'm with, you know what I mean? But like, yeah, I mean, I guess if I were single or something, no, I couldn't, you know. Dealing with friends and family during the holidays when everybody's kind of, you know, I mean, the holidays, whether we like to admit it or not, are, you know, have a heavy focus on food, and it's kind of about gathering at the table and, you know, sharing stories, catching up, making memories. And a lot of that surrounds food. Food's kind of at the center of these things sometimes. I took something called the Liberation Pledge, which is basically, in short, you know, I don't sit at the same table as other people who are eating animals or animal secretions. Part of the reason I took that pledge is because I didn't want to normalize this violence. I felt like if I sat at the table with someone while they're consuming, you know, the breast milk of an animal who had their child ripped away from them, or if they were eating the flesh of an animal that had their life ripped away from them, I felt like I was normalizing this. Now, it's not to say that the Liberation Pledge is the only way, because I don't think it is. I think it's also beneficial to sit at the table and, you know, have your vegan meal and, you know, share why you're vegan. I mean, that can be great too, but for me personally, this is the path that I chose. And another part of taking the Liberation Pledge was honestly a little bit of selfishness, because, you know, I've seen these animals in distress in person. I've gone up to these trucks carrying animals to slaughter, and I've connected with these animals. I've shed tears with these animals, and to watch other people consume these animals, for me, is almost unbearable. It's even worse if the person that's consuming the animals is someone that you care about and love. So yeah, the Liberation Pledge, I just explain it to anybody that I'm sharing a meal with, and, you know, usually they understand. Sometimes they don't understand, and it can cause some awkward moments, but I think ultimately it's really an opportunity. When you turn down eating with someone who's got this violence on their plate, really it's an opportunity to share why you're vegan and really share the stories of these animals that end up on plates. And that's been really good for me. So most of the time with family stuff, our smaller family get-togethers, everybody's super respectful of that, and a lot of them are you know, kind of have a heavy, you know, plant-based diet anyway, even if they're not completely vegan, which is great. If there's an instance where it's not like that, I sit at a different table, and, you know, there's pros and cons with that. You know, I feel like I maybe miss out on some of the conversations and memories that I can make with family members, but when I look at a plate that has flesh on it, it just takes me back to, you know, being with these animals who are suffering and bearing witness there. So it's really difficult for me to do that, and I hope that my explanation is good enough for people to understand just why I can't sit at the same table when that kind of thing's going on. I think it would have been really great to be raised vegan. Obviously, I think my childhood would have been a lot different. I don't really know how I would have navigated all that as a child, but there's some activists who are kids that I really look up to that have been vegan for either all their lives or, started at a very, very young age. And these are some bright kids and that I have a lot of respect for. And they're great activists. So yeah, I mean, I do sometimes think about, what would it have been like to have been vegan for all my life and not having contributed to all the suffering that I have contributed to. I mean, that's a hard fact to face, is that I was complicit in violence for the majority of my life, sadly. There's nothing we can do about the past. Unfortunately, all we can do is look forward. If we dwell in the past, it's just gonna allow even more animals to be harmed because we're using our time to wallow in self-pity instead of take action for the animals. Hopefully my story will help other people go vegan and become activists, and hopefully my actions will, help other people do the same. A lot of people say, hopefully my activism offsets the animals that, essentially died for me, before I was vegan. I don't really look at it like that because, animals are individuals, right? We can look at it as numbers, but in reality, there are animals who suffered on my behalf. So I can never make that up to them ever. And that's just something I have to accept, as hard as it may be. But what I can do is live in the present, focus on the now and focus on the future and, what I want to help achieve for animals and what I can do within my power to help. Do I have any regrets? I think almost every vegan will tell you their biggest regret is not going vegan sooner. That's one of my biggest regrets in life, just knowing that I contributed to that suffering for so long. I wish I had gone vegan sooner, and when I talk to people about going vegan, if they say they're interested in it, I'm like, your biggest regret will be that you didn't do it sooner. So yeah, of course, I think that's every vegan's regret. Why didn't I go vegan sooner? I think part of it was just ignorance, to be honest. I did care about animals. I didn't want to see animals suffer. When I was around 16, I was jamming around with some guys playing music, and the guy that was playing guitar, he was a vegetarian at the time, and he showed us some, I think it was a PETA video of some cows being slaughtered, and it really impacted me. And I was the kind of teenager who, I live in a small town. McDonald's is honestly one of the only restaurants. And I grew up on McDonald's in the drive-thru several times a week at McDonald's. And after watching that video of that cow, I couldn't even watch the whole thing. I caught little glances of it because it was so horrific. I ordered, a cheeseburger at McDonald's, and, I didn't want to go through the drive-thru, but I just thought, what else is there to eat? This is all I know. I don't know what to do. I was 16 and definitely didn't have a lot of money. I made all the excuses, and I looked at the burger, and I kind of thought before I bit into it, and I was like, I have to eat something, and I took a bite of that burger and almost instantly wanted to throw up. That's coming from somebody who doesn't throw up much. I haven't thrown up since I was 11 years old. So to want to throw up, you know, but I think I forced myself to eat like half of it, and then I couldn't anymore. And eventually I got those thoughts out of my head, right? I shoved those thoughts out of my head, which is what so many of us do. And then, you know, it kind of got revisited later when I was in a band, and, you know, some of those guys were vegetarian, and I already told that story. But if I'd had more resources, I feel like if I'd known other vegans, you know, maybe I would have went vegan sooner. I feel like once I saw that cow footage, I didn't have really a good excuse to not at least be vegetarian with the information that I had. But just being young and feeling kind of powerless, honestly, had a lot to do with it. But yeah, once I got a little older and, you know, realized what was going on and realized that I had the power now, I'd run out of excuses, basically. So that's when I went vegan. So prior to going vegan, I never thought I would be a vegan. So, you know, if you're trying to get somebody to go vegan and they say, I'll never be vegan, I mean, yeah, I thought I would never be vegan either. I was so incredibly addicted to cheese. It was unbelievable. And now I know that cheese has addictive qualities in it, and dairy in general. So that makes sense. But even when I was a vegetarian, my friends called me a cheesetarian because I ate so much cheese. Literally the local sandwich shop, I would walk in there and they called me the cheese man, and they would just start making my order before I even said anything. They knew it was just like bread with all the different cheeses on it, and that's it. That's literally what I would eat. I was so addicted to cheese. So I think cheese is a hang up for a lot of people. But once you realize what happens in the dairy industry, you know, once you realize that these cows are sexually exploited for their reproductive systems, and they have their children ripped away from them, you know, the male calves are useless to the dairy industry, so they're pretty much killed instantly. Once you know all these things, I mean, as much as you might like cheese, there's no way you like cheese more than animals like their lives, or want to live, at least. Their lives aren't the greatest on, you know, dairy farms, obviously. But, you know, cows want to be with their children more than you want to have cheese in your mouth. I can promise you that. I do take a B12. You know, lots of non-vegans will try to tell you, oh, you have to take supplements because you're a vegan or whatever. I mean, and, you know, as the vegans watching this know already, B12, you know, it once could have been consumed through plants, but, you know, our sanitation process nowadays, you know, scrubs all that off. So, and also, you know, the animals that people eat are injected with B12, so they're getting a supplement indirectly. So I don't think it's bad to have to take B12. I think everybody should probably take it regardless of whether they're vegan or not. So yeah, that's the only supplement I take, B12. I did not acquire any ailments after becoming vegan. Like I said before, I had allergies that got better. Used to be 320 pounds. I lost a ton of weight. Everything was just better. I went to the doctor for checkups, and, you know, they only saw improvements, so everything was good. Dude, honestly, the only reason that I even went to the doctor to get that work done is because, like, I had to for insurance. Like, I hardly ever go to the doctor. Yeah. So if you're wanting to go vegan, something that I highly recommend is just kind of making a shopping list of what you already buy, and then get the vegan versions of that. If you're on a budget, you know, there's a lot of resources for that too. And I also just kind of got out there and tried some new food. I mean, you know, when you've got this whole new world that's opened up to you, it can be really fun to try food. It kind of made food exciting for me again to, you know, experiment and, you know, try some different things in addition to veganizing the things that I already ate. So, you know, if on your shopping list is like burgers and pizza, for example, then just get the plant-based burger patties, make sure your buns are vegan, get the vegan cheese, get the vegan crust, get the vegan toppings. Veganize what you're already eating. That's a tip that I have, but everybody's different. So some resources that I recommend are the veganswitch.org. They basically pair you with a mentor who will kind of give you one-on-one attention. There's also challenge22.com. They also have mentors that are kind of working as a team. They also have registered dietitians, so they can, if you've got some kind of, medical reason that might make it a little more difficult to go vegan, those people can help you work through that. If you're wanting to do more of a transition, you could do 10 Weeks to Vegan by Vegan Outreach. That kind of takes away certain animal products every week, and then in 10 weeks you're vegan. If that's the only way you're going to do it, do that. But you have to remember, if you don't go vegan right away, animals are kind of still suffering on your behalf during that time. But obviously starting somewhere is better than starting nowhere. So some resources I would recommend for going vegan are theveganswitch.org, challenge22.com, 10 Weeks to Vegan by Vegan Outreach. There's also, if you want to dive more into the health side, PCRM. I've got Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen on my fridge. I don't always follow it to a T, so I'm sorry, Dr. Greger. I'm working on it, but that's a great resource as well. Why do I think some people quit veganism? That is a loaded question. Okay. First of all, I don't think you can quit being vegan. I think, people who say they're ex-vegans were never vegan to begin with. Because if you know about the suffering of animals and you've switched to a plant-based diet and a lifestyle that excludes exploitation as far as possible, and then you go back to that, I don't think that person was ever vegan. Is there an opportunity for them to be vegan in the future? Yes, and I hope they will be, but yeah, I don't really believe in the term ex-vegans. I think you're either vegan or you're not, and if you're not, then you never were. So yeah, veganism is a philosophy that seeks to exclude the exploitation of animals. So if you're that easily able to change your philosophy and go back down that path of violence, I really don't think you're ever vegan to begin with. Now, that's not to say that, people sometimes try to go vegan and they fail. And that's something that happens. So I'm not trying to shame anybody who's trying at all. So if you're trying to go vegan and you failed, keep trying. You can do it, and eventually, yeah, you'll be vegan, and that'll be great. So a lot of times when you're doing activism that is centered around trying to get people to go vegan, you don't always know what the result is. Somebody might tell you on the street, yeah, I'm gonna go vegan, and then they go home and they don't, and you don't really have a way of knowing. Or somebody says, I can never go vegan, but then maybe they get to thinking about it a little more and they do go vegan, and you'll have never known that you made that impact. So those kinds of things happen. So you don't always get to know about the fruits of your labor when it comes to that kind of activism. A story that stands out to me, we were at a 5-day activism event in eastern North Carolina. There are a lot of pigs there, in CAFOs and holding pens, and the largest pig slaughterhouse in the world currently is there. In Tar Heel, North Carolina. So I was in eastern North Carolina and I filmed some pigs that were in a holding facility. These pigs are referred to as breeding sows. They're basically the mothers who are exploited over and over again for their reproductive systems so that they can breed the pigs that will be murdered into existence. So every 6 months, these babies grow up and they're murdered, they're gassed to death, and then their bodies are eaten. So these mothers have seen countless children disappear from them, go on to be murdered. I was at this holding facility in eastern North Carolina. Most of the pigs there looked like they had gone insane. They looked horrible. They looked like they had endured so much mental trauma that they were not even living in reality. Like, a lot of them would be just kind of staring off into the distance, exhibiting like really strange behavior. Nothing I had ever really seen before, and it was awful. But there was this one pig in that whole entire area who looked like she still had her mind. And I filmed that pig. She looked directly into the lens, and she gave a look that a million words could not describe. And I posted that video online, and this guy that I was friends with on Facebook, he took a screenshot of that moment and he posted it in the comments. And he said, I took a screenshot of this because it's the exact moment that I decided to go vegan. I decided to make a change. That's the one that stands out the most to me. It really meant a lot to me that pig, you know, she was killed. But because, you know, she was on film and posted online, she had a platform to change someone's mind. And, you know, all I really did was help facilitate that. I mean, that pig got that guy to go vegan, not me. I was just there. To be able to do that and know that somebody changed their life because of that pig means a lot to me. So that's one of the most memorable moments I have as far as, you know, helping someone decide they wanted to go vegan. Something that another activist told me that's kind of stuck with me, well, he talks about what he calls the power of being out there. So when we go do activism, we don't always know for sure that we're going to make a change, or if we are, we don't know if we're going to make a change in that moment. But when you put yourself out there, and that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to do the most effective activism possible, but you can spend so much time planning something and never executing it because you don't think it's perfect or you don't think it's good enough. But this activist, who I consider a mentor, I feel like he's right here. He says, you know, it's the power of being out there, because when you put yourself out there, you give yourself the opportunity to make a change. But if you don't put yourself out there, you never will. So no one's activism is perfect. You know, it's impossible to be perfect. But don't let the pursuit of perfection be the enemy of, you know, the good things that you can do. Sometimes you just go out and just kind of make things happen, or sometimes you're just at the right place at the right time. But those things will not happen unless you put yourself out there. So I think my friend always talking about the power of being out there, that's something that's always stuck with me. It's not really like a quote, but
no, it's kind of
something.
You actually made your own in there, I think.
Something that I would like to see change within the vegan movement and the animal rights movement, I feel like people can just be so judgmental of one another. We are all trying to get to this world where animals are liberated. Some of us are at different spots, you know, in our journey to that, and our continuing education on that. So, you know, if somebody falls, I would encourage you to, you know, gently remind them of something, or help pick them up. If somebody's doing activism in a way that you honestly think is hurtful for the animals, maybe open up like a private dialogue about that, because I do think it's good if we all give each other constructive criticism, you know, because I think that things can only get better and more effective for the animals if we do that. But, you know, for example, you know, if somebody says "it" when they're referring to an animal, that's speciesist language, right? It's language. It may not seem like a lot, but it's language that furthers the idea that animals are objects. So if I hear somebody call an animal it, I don't say, you're such a speciesist, why are you doing that? I say like, hey, like maybe when you're referring to an animal, use a different term, something to think about, and I tell them why. And that still might upset them because, people a lot of times don't like to be criticized, even if it's a gentle, whatever. But some of the most meaningful conversations I've had from other activists are ones where they reached out to me privately and, gave me some good criticism. So I think that's crucial. So I would say to animal rights activists, something that I think we should change is, be open to criticism, but also, be mindful with your criticism. Think about the hill that you want to die on. Like, do you really want it to be some of these super nitpicky things? We're all trying to fight for animal liberation here. So, let's focus on the things that matter and try to help animals instead of getting so caught up in giving criticisms that don't help anything. Do I think we'll ever see a completely 100% vegan world in my lifetime? Unfortunately, probably not. I think a lot of the work that we're doing now will hopefully set up future generations to be able to achieve something close to that. But there are some very realistic goals within our lifetime, and we are going to have close to a vegan world pretty soon, or else we're not going to have a world. I've been to Tar Heel, North Carolina, where the largest slaughterhouse in the world is. And just breathing in the air there is absolutely horrible. My skin, I feel like, is even affected when I go there. There's an elementary school across from this slaughterhouse where kids are breathing all this in. And, it's on the coast. When we have hurricanes and storms, all of the blood and feces and urine and guts that are in these giant cesspools that are outside of slaughterhouses, the water just mixes in with all the water when there's a flood. This stuff is being drained into our waterways. There's so many things about animal exploitation and how it affects the environment. And obviously we know now that zoonotic diseases are a thing. I mean, most of us have been affected by COVID in some way or another. All these zoonotic diseases have been because we can't seem to leave animals alone. HIV, SARS, MERS, swine flu, bird flu, mad cow disease, COVID-19, these are all preventable diseases that if humans had just left animals alone, I mean, what do you expect when you put animals in horrific confinement and, you fill them so full of antibiotics that eventually they're going to become immune to it? The people consuming those antibiotics indirectly through the animal flesh, they're going to become antibiotic resistant. I mean, there's just so many issues. We're just not going to have an inhabitable planet unless we do get close to a vegan world. So will we see that in my lifetime? Unfortunately, I doubt it, but there's some realistic goals that we can set. I think we can end the fur industry really soon if we keep the pressure on, and we have to see it all the way through. We can't, jump ship and start focusing on something else because we just hope the rest will fizzle out. We have to totally see it through, and then we can move on to other things as well. Not to say that we shouldn't be fighting for a number of different things, but I'm just saying a group of us has to focus on fur and see that all the way through, because if someone doesn't, then that industry could rise from the ashes. But if we see it all the way through, I think we can completely end it. And I think if we do that, we will have the blueprints to be able to end other industries. We'll have a little bit more of a paved path for ending these other industries, because we'll know how to shut an industry down. If we stay focused and we stay unified and we stay determined. I think that even if we can't achieve a completely vegan world in our lifetimes, we can get a lot of significant victories and save a lot of animals and prevent a lot of animals from being bred into an existence of torture and pain. When I went on that 5-day trip to Eastern North Carolina and did that activism there, it was so brutal. We opened up what's called a dead box. There was a dumpster and there was a dead mother pig inside with probably like 50 babies in there. I'm not sure why they had been discarded. Then right after that, we went to a sanctuary, and I was like, this is what a vegan world would look like. This is what a vegan world could be. This is what the world could be like. People caring about animals, people respecting animals, people realizing that animals are individuals with their own, needs and wants and personality traits. These are beings that deserve our attention, they deserve our respect. That'll be what a vegan world looks like when people understand that, not everything revolves around humans. We're just one species in a world of many, many, many species. I do think our species has been charged with being stewards of the planet because we have so much power. That's a big responsibility, and obviously we're not doing well with that responsibility. We're not doing too well with that. So that's really what a vegan world is. Us actually being, us humans, being stewards of our planet, that being also all of the planet's residents. Yeah, I think if we had a vegan world, maybe humans would treat each other a little better too, because if everybody had that understanding of, not exploiting others, not thinking of someone as less than because of their species or because they look different than you or because they have different qualities about them, yeah, I think that would affect human relationships as well. Maybe we could solve a lot of the problems that humans face today if everybody had that, moral foundation. It boils down to treat others the way you want to be treated, right? I mean, that is a clear theme in so many different religions, and people who are non-religious, often abide by that as their, or at least say they do, or strive to. I think it's pretty simple. Treat others the way you want to be treated. All we have to do is acknowledge that non-humans are others, and they are our neighbors, and they are here with us. We've got to treat them the way we would want to be treated if we were in their position. That's really it. It's that simple. One of the fears that I had when I first went vegan was that I would be missing out on food. I've always kind of been like a picky eater. Not really so much anymore, because veganism has kind of forced me to try a lot of new foods, try a lot of new things, and there's so many foods that I never would have given a chance before being vegan, and now I'm just so much more open to what I will try, as long as it's vegan, of course. But everything I ate before that I was worried that I would miss out on, pizza and burgers and ice cream and, the the foods that, most of us Americans really like to eat, they're still there. They're just in a vegan form. There's wonderful, delicious vegan cheeses out there, and different vegan dairy products. I don't miss anything. I don't miss anything at all. And my diet has actually expanded to be larger than it ever has been as far as the variety of foods that I enjoy. So, now I usually eat like twice a day, somewhere, either mid-morning or early afternoon. I eat a big smoothie bowl for dinner. Usually eat something else, maybe like burgers or, ziti or you know, a burrito, tacos, burrito bowls, pizza, gyros, all kinds of stuff. You know, there's lots of food to eat, but try to stick to that smoothie bowl every day because it's delicious, and also try to sneak my flaxseed in there and get some of Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen stuff in there in that smoothie bowl. My smoothie bowl, okay, so I usually take like some organic frozen berries. It's usually like a mixture of strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, maybe some blackberries. I use some oat milk and blend that up, put it in the bowl, and then usually with some either peanut butter or some sunflower butter or something like that. Fresh fruit on top if I have it, and some granola and coconut shreds. That's my go-to smoothie bowl. Pretty delicious. I have Dr. Greger's like Daily Dozen thing on my fridge just to like make sure I'm not complete. I definitely don't hit it every day. So I mean, you know, like I'm healthy in general, but I don't, you know, not like a health nut or anything like that. So I won't comment too much on carnivore, paleo, and all, you know, those types of diets, keto. I'm not a nutritionist, but what I do know is the largest group of nutritionists and dietitians in the world, the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. I think they've got like over 100,000 members, and they put out a peer-reviewed statement that says, you know, plant-based diets are suitable for all stages of life, including infancy and pregnancy, and, you know, that's all you really need. So, I mean, why choose a diet that exploits animals if you can have a diet that doesn't and still be healthy? I mean, you know, I'm not a nutritionist or an expert, but I'm relying on the experts here, and you know, if I can eat without exploiting others, why not? I definitely no longer crave any kind of animal products anymore. I mean, I've only been vegan for about 5 years, but I've not eaten an animal in 12 years. So I feel like my palate's just completely, you know, like cleansed of all that. Like I don't have any cravings for any of that at all. Maybe there was some certain things that I missed right when I first went vegetarian. But I mean, even back then, there were some decent options. There were some decent options back then when I went vegetarian. So I've never really significantly wanted anything, because, you know, you might miss a certain product, but do you actually want it when you've seen what these animals go through? No. And eventually, once you free your taste buds of blood and flesh and coagulated breast milk and you know, hen ovulations and bee vomit and whatever else you might be eating like that, once you free yourself of that, it's kind of like if you smoke cigarettes and you love them, and then you quit, and then cigarettes start bothering you, and you're like, oh, what's that smell? Cigarettes. And once you view animals in that way too, like when you smell something that maybe you used to would have loved to eat, now you just think about rotting flesh on a grill, or, you know, whatever the case may be. It's not too appetizing. So no, I don't crave any foods that I used to eat before I went vegan. Not at all. What do I think about plant-based meats? I think they're great. I mean, if you can eat something that, you know, tastes familiar, like maybe what you grew up with or what you're used to, but it doesn't exploit animals, yeah, I mean, why not? People who are not vegan sometimes use the argument, well, if you're vegan, why are you trying to make all your food look and taste like meat or whatever? And I'm kind of like, well, I mean, if you eat animals, why are you trying to make an animal look like food? You know, I mean, most people don't eat their sausage with the, you know, pig's head still on the sausage. You know, most people, you know, will get upset if they find a chicken head in their, you know, chicken nugget meal or whatever. So why are you trying to make an animal look like food? Would I ever eat lab-grown meat. No, I would not. I do not want to eat anything that resembles flesh that much, or something that I guess is actually flesh. To me, that would still be like a commodification of an animal. But I do support lab-grown meat because I think it's just going to be so beneficial. I mean, think about sanctuaries that have carnivorous animals. We'll be able to feed them this lab-grown meat instead of like continuing to kill animals to keep other animals alive. I think that's something we struggle with as vegans. Like, what's the right call here? What should we do? Yeah, I think lab-grown meat will be great for that. And, I mean, while it's not for me, and I don't think it would be for most people who call themselves vegan, people who eat meat, if they're going to eat it, I would much rather an animal not die for it. So even though I do think it's still like a form of commodification, you're still commodifying an animal's body. And I think part of veganism is not doing that. You know what I mean? Not commodifying animals or looking at animals as a resource or viewing animals as food. But for people who are never going to adapt that mindset and are always going to continue to eat meat, like, yeah, why not eat meat that comes from a lab instead of an animal? I'm fine with it. If my doctor told me that I had to eat animals, I would find a new doctor. Find one that knows what they're talking about. Yeah. My dogs do eat a plant-based diet. I know this is like something that's controversial, even amongst vegans. One of the longest living dogs ever was on a plant-based diet. I had 2 of my dogs before I ever went vegan, and I was feeding them this, like premium food that was not plant-based. They would like throw up all the time and, had like issues, and we switched them to this plant-based diet. And, of course, I did all the research that I could and thought, is this really doable? Because I had my own doubts and questions. And yeah, I mean, I think dogs can absolutely be plant-based. I've got 4 dogs, 2 of them that I had before I went vegan. They've pretty much been plant-based ever since I have, maybe a couple months after me or something. They're happy, healthy dogs. They go to the vet for checkups and everything's good. And I've got a dog that I've had for almost a year now, and she had muscle loss when we found her as a stray. She's a Great Pyrenees, and she was, I think, maybe like around 62 pounds or something like that when we found her, which is very small for Great Pyrenees. And I just took her to the vet yesterday to have her nails trimmed, and they weighed her, and she is over 80 pounds now. On her plant-based diet, which is probably more suitable for a Great Pyrenees. So yeah, I mean, she's getting the nutrition she needs. All the vets talk about, how great she looks. When we first got her too, we had to test her for heartworm, and she was heartworm positive. And, after like 9 months, you have to go back and retest, and we did that recently. And the people remembered her there at the Humane Society, and they were like, this is the same dog. So yeah, I mean, she's very healthy on a plant-based diet for sure. You do have to make sure whatever you're feeding your dogs, I mean, you can't just feed them anything. Some plants are toxic to dogs, obviously. But yeah, I mean, my dogs love their plant-based kibble. They also love their plant-based wet food. And they also love some plant-based treats like blueberries and strawberries and pumpkin and rice, lettuce, even spinach. They love little bites of these types of things. Definitely, if you're just feeding your dog out of the fridge, look up vegetables and fruits that might be toxic to dogs. I know, like, obviously, like chocolate is toxic to dogs, and onions and garlic, those are some things you have to worry about. Grapes. So anything, just always do a quick Google search if you're not sure. Like we ran out of dog food the other day and we get it shipped, so, for a day or two we were feeding them like, rice and pumpkin and, some leafy greens and some berries, they like that stuff. Yes, all my dogs are rescues. Onion, who we got first, she's a little Shih Tzu. Had some people who just couldn't take care of her anymore or didn't want to take care of her anymore for whatever reason, I'm not sure. And she was our first dog, and yeah, we love her. Then my sister got a small dog as well, and we would bring Onion over, and they would play and play and play. And then we realized we've got to get Onion a friend. We'd never seen that side of her before. And so, then we got Bean, who's a little Yorkie poo. We got her from a rescue in Alabama. And her and Onion are best friends, and they really love each other. Bean's kind of the boss of the house, even though she's the smallest dog in the house. And we didn't plan on getting any more dogs, but about a year ago, we were on the way home from the grocery store, and I saw a stray dog walking out in a 4-lane highway, and I just knew she was going to get hit. I even said it out loud. I was like, she's going to get hit, she's going to get hit, and then boom, she got hit. And I was like, oh. And then we ran out and got her, and we took her to the emergency vet. And if anybody that's watching this contributed to her surgery, thank you so much. It was like $5,000, and I put out a SOS immediately when we were trying to help this dog, and people really stepped up and contributed and really helped give her this opportunity to have this surgery. So thank you if you contributed to that. The community, my friends and strangers, frankly, stepped up, and we got this surgery for her. And originally the plan was to foster her until she got better and then find a great home. But you know how it goes. So she's with us now forever. And, she has a ton of energy, and, she would try to play with our little dogs, and it's a little too dangerous for them to play too much. And the little dogs kind of didn't really want much to do with her because they're like, you're too big, stay away from me. So then we kind of realized that, we needed to get Frances a friend too. And a friend of mine had posted a dog a while back on Facebook that she had found that was walking around the streets as a stray. Had a play date, and everything seemed to work out good, and now they're best friends. And his name is Walnut, but we call him Wally for short. So Frances and Wally are best friends. They love each other, and I've finally got another guy in the house. Me and him are the only guys in the house. So, how did I get started with activism? Like I said, I went vegan when I was living in Alabama. There wasn't a whole lot of activism going on around there. It really started when a friend of mine said, "Hey, this guy's doing like a activism tour, and he's coming through your area. Like, would you mind like putting him up for the night or whatever?" I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. I was just like really thrilled to meet somebody who was an activist. And his name was Yuri, and he was with his friend Yuki, and they were on like a leafleting tour. They would go to different college campuses and hand out leaflets. And so that day on my lunch break, I joined them. They came and spent the night, and then, the next day they were doing their activism, and then they were on to the next place. But while they were there, on my lunch break at work that day, I went and handed out leaflets with them and had conversations with people, and largely did not know what I was talking about. It was just my first time getting out there, and I probably made some mistakes, but ultimately I'm really glad I got out there and just started. So I was really thankful that Yuri and Yuki came through on that activism tour. And I had been posting some stuff online before that and that kind of thing, but it was great to like get out in the streets and do activism with other like-minded people. And then I started organizing some activism locally that got a little bit of traction, and then I moved back to South Carolina, and found some people around here to do activism with, and been doing that ever since. Yeah. If I wasn't an activist, what would I be doing? Before I was an activist, I was really, I was a musician for a long time, sometimes wrote. I'm still a filmmaker. Maybe if I wasn't an activist, I would, get a little more into some of those hobbies. I used to kayak a lot. Like whitewater kayaking. I used to do that kind of thing too, a lot more. I should probably still do those things a little more and try to keep those things around. I've just gotten so into activism, and I try to use some of those things like filmmaking, for activism. I'm not too sure what I'd be doing, but I'm glad I found activism because, I feel like before I did, even though I don't think I was a super selfish person necessarily, really when you actually analyze it, all of my goals were selfish. And there's nothing wrong with, wanting to be happy and pursuing things that you like, but activism gave me an opportunity to pursue something that was just beyond me. And yeah, I think that's been really fulfilling, and it's given me an opportunity to do something with my life. Something meaningful. So I'm glad I get to do that. I wish we didn't have to do it because I wish the problems weren't here. But since they are, I'm honored to do the work. I've never been inside of a slaughterhouse. I've never been inside of a CAFO. I have been to those holding pens that I talked about. I have opened up dumpsters to find animals dead inside. I've, seen them on the trucks and connected with them while they're on the trucks on their way to slaughter. I've seen them in that way, but no, I've never been inside a slaughterhouse. I have been outside of a live market looking in the window, watching them chop up chickens. Unfortunately, I've seen plenty of horrific things without even having to go inside of a slaughterhouse or a CAFO. There's just so much exploitation everywhere. What I would want to tell people is, being vegan is great. If you're not vegan, you should go vegan. I feel like that's a moral baseline. But really, if we're going to have change in this world, we need everybody to be activists in some way or another. Now, some people, when they think about an activist, they think of somebody, like pouring blood on people who are wearing fur coats, or, charging into a grocery store with a bullhorn or whatever. And, activists do those things too. But really, activism can be anything. If you're a plumber, you can, help a sanctuary if they have plumbing needs, or an electrician or a mechanic, you can help sanctuaries out with those kinds of skills. If you're an artist, you can find ways to use that for the animals, whether it be to bring awareness or auction off your work, or whatever the case may be. No matter what your skill set is, there's a way to help animals. And if you don't feel like you have a skill, you probably do and just don't realize it. But if you don't feel like you have a skill, there's other unskilled ways to help the animals. There's so many different things you can do. So I hope that I don't scare anybody off by saying you need to be an activist, because there's so many different ways to get involved. Everybody should be using their unique talents and gifts to help animals however we can. And there's a hypothetical example that people use to describe veganism versus activism, which is, if you're walking down the street and you see somebody kicking a dog, then what do you
wouldn't do that.
Nobody's actually kicking a dog, Francis. You don't have to worry. You don't have to worry. So if you're walking down the street and you see somebody kicking a dog, what do? Do you walk on by and you don't say anything? Do you join in the kicking and you help kick the dog? Or do you intervene and help the dog? You compare walking on by to veganism. You're not complicit in the violence. You're not partaking in the violence, but you're also not really doing anything about it. And then you've got, carnism, which is basically non-veganism. That's who's like kicking the dog, helping kick the dog, perpetuating that violence. And then you've got activism, which is intervening, getting between the guy and the dog, picking the dog up and carrying the dog to safety, finding a home for the dog, taking the dog in, getting them to a hospital, whatever you got to do. Like that's activism. The world's not going to change with us just, like leading by example. I'm sorry, but leading by example is like not enough. We have to take action for the animals, not just be vegan. Being vegan is great, but it's really just like, I don't expect a pat on the back because, I didn't like murder a human today, and most people don't. It's a moral baseline. It's just like what we should be doing, like it's really obvious, and that's kind of the way it is with animals. Like veganism's just what we should be doing. It's a moral baseline, like, congratulations, you're not like murdering animals anymore. I mean, I do think we should like celebrate when people go vegan, because it is a little different, because we're kind of like brainwashed into that. So it's a celebration when we unbrainwash ourselves, that is. But once you have that realization, and once you have the responsibility, and honestly, for lack of a better term, the burden of doing more. Because you're one of the few people who has made this connection in this world. So few people are vegans compared to the global population. So few of us are vegans. So if you are vegan, you do have a responsibility to do some kind of activism in some way. So whatever way that is, find it and do it so that we can achieve animal liberation sooner. If you don't know what to do, you can sign up for a mentor at animalactivismmentorship.com. And that's a completely free program where, people will help you figure out the best way you can help animals and how you can contribute